Hey, how's it going, friends? Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. Good morning. It is currently 10:10 a.m., January 14th, the year of our Lord 2023. And according to reports here, as I was checking the news this morning, uh, Russia launched a new wave of missile attacks aimed mostly at infrastructure throughout Ukraine. So I have a report here from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. But as always, you can see here we have multiple reports here from pretty much all the mainstream media news sources from both sides. We have the BBC reporting on it. Ukraine war latest. People pulled from rubble as Russian missile hits flats. So looks like one of the missiles did hit a civilian building there. Russia, okay, so let's see. We have Bloomberg reporting on that. Most of the Western media news sources are trying to focus on that building it hit, but according to Ukrainian reports, most of the missiles did hit infrastructure, energy infrastructure. They're trying to cut out the lights, the water service, pretty much demoralize the Ukrainian population in order to put pressure on the Ukrainian government and as well as strategically to leave the Ukrainian military without a means of energy, of course. Russian offensive, we see here the Hill. Ukraine officials report missile attacks on Kyiv, Kharkiv. We got the Moscow Times there, Fox News. Kyiv hit with Russian missiles and first attack in weeks 2 hours ago. So, I just want to touch on the fact that, again, Russia did just put a new general in charge. I covered that in one of my previous videos. General Gerasimov here, who is the top-ranking military general in the Russian army, and he is now the head of operations in Ukraine. This comes in the midst of a suspected major offensive here in the next couple of weeks, at the most within the next 2 months. And so this guy, as I covered in my video covering the news there of the change of leadership, actually has a military doctrine named after him, as you can see here. You can go read about it, and it's pretty much his philosophy on how you should, carry out a strategy during wartime or in foreign policy affairs. It's called the Gerasimov Doctrine. But in light of these attacks this morning here, I just wanted to read a little bit here about his thoughts on how a war should be carried out. So we can see here the doctrine calls for a 4-to-1 ratio of non-military to military action, meaning that for every military action Russia takes, there should be at least 4 non-military actions that they also take. Gerasimov emphasizes the importance of controlling the information space, which all nations try and do through propaganda, and the real-time coordination of all aspects of a campaign. This just means that, he pretty much wants to manage everything going on in real time, getting real-time updates of the situation and making decisions accordingly. So it's a very kind of old school way of managing the situation. In addition to the use of targeted, so here's the key right here, right? In light of these missile attacks, look at what this guy's strategy is. In addition to the use of targeted strikes deep in enemy territory and the destruction of critical civilian as well as military infrastructure. So you can see that we're probably going to see a lot more of these attacks deep into Ukrainian territory, especially on the infrastructure, as Russia gets ready to launch this large offensive. And again, I just wanted to show you that because this coincides with the news that I'm reporting on here. So let's take a quick read here from Radio Free Europe. Again, this is a Western media news source, so of course it's going to be biased in its reporting in support of Ukraine, of course. And again, you have to take a look, at sources from multiple media websites and things like that, and then just kind of come to your own conclusion there. Ukrainian officials said waves of Russian missile attacks on Kyiv and other major cities had damaged key infrastructure sites as local authorities warned of potential cuts in electricity and water supplies in the first major attacks since the start of the year. Air raid sirens blared in much of the country on January 14th, as strikes were reported in the capital as well as in the western city of Lviv, Kharkiv in the east, Odessa in the south, and Dnipro in the south-central region, where officials said an apartment block had been struck by Russian missiles with many fear buried under the rubble. So very unfortunate there. It seems that a civilian apartment building was struck there, and there could be many dead there. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has informed Kyiv that Britain intends to send main battle tanks and artillery support to aid Ukraine's war effort against invading Russian forces, a move Moscow condemned. The Prime Minister outlined the UK's ambition to intensify our support to Ukraine, including through the provision of Challenger 2 tanks and additional artillery systems, a British spokesperson said. The attack on the Ukrainian capital was announced on Telegram by the city's military administration on January 14th. The office of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky advised residents of Kyiv to seek shelter while explosions that sounded similar to missiles being shot down by air defense forces were reportedly heard in the city. Kyiv Mayor Vitalik Klitschko said in a series of posts on Telegram that explosions were reported in the city's eastern residential Dniprovsky district, and parts of a missile had crashed in an uninhabited part of the Holizivsky district. Klitschko said no casualties had been reported, and a fire at a non-residential building in the Holizivsky district had been extinguished. According to presidential office deputy head Kyrilo Timoshenko, the attack targeted critical infrastructure. Timoshenko also wrote on Telegram that a residential building in the village of Kopyliv in the Kyiv region was struck, breaking windows of residential buildings. He said that as of late morning there was no information regarding any possible victims related to that incident. So again, you hear it here directly from the presidential office that the targets were mostly on critical infrastructure. But again, you see all these other Western media news sources focusing on that one missile that hit that apartment, right? So they're trying to paint this light that Russia is carrying out these random attacks on civilian buildings. Again, that's part of this strategy which all nations carry out, which is the the same thing that Gerasimov is talking here in his military doctrine, which emphasizes the importance of controlling the information space, right? What news you report in order to create the desired sentiment in the populace. Ukraine Air Force spokesman Yuri Inat said the missiles had been fired from a high trajectory from the north, suggesting they were ballistic missiles that Ukraine is unable to shoot down. So this is very telling here. Apparently they're saying these were ballistic missiles that were shot way high up and then descend down on their target, and Ukraine has no way of stopping those attacks, which is why Ukraine is desperately seeking to deploy those Patriot missile defense systems, which the U.S. is supposedly training Ukrainian soldiers on how to use, but they can't come soon enough here. So you can see pretty much all of Ukraine is vulnerable to these ballistic missiles, which aren't even the most advanced missiles that the Russians have. So again, very alarming, and was not able to detect in time to immediately alert civilians of an air raid. So they're not even able to alert the civilian population when these ballistic missiles are coming in. The fresh attacks came a day after Ukraine and Russia gave conflicting accounts of the situation in the eastern Ukrainian town of Soledar. Again, I've been reporting for a couple of days here that the Russians, in fact, have control of Soledar. They've encircled the city, and I'll be making a video here shortly. They're actually turning their focus to Bakhmut, which where there's already some ferocious fighting taking place, with reports of British and possibly American mercenaries in Bakhmut, trying to create a resistance there, because once Bakhmut fails, that is going to be a major turning point and a major failure for Ukraine here. Of course, you're going to have Ukraine downplaying this all the way through, which, I wouldn't expect anything less from either side. That's the purpose of the propaganda, right? To try and minimize your losses. Never going to admit that you're getting defeated till it's actually indisputable, right? The site of intense fighting between Russia and Ukraine forces in recent weeks. In his nightly video address on January 13th, Zelensky rejected claims by Russia's defense ministry that it captured the strategically important salt mining town in the eastern Donetsk region. The capture of Soledar, which could give Russian forces a hub to cut off Ukrainian supply lines, while also providing a staging ground for attacks on the nearby city of Bakhmut, would be Moscow's most substantial military gain in its war against Ukraine in months. Kyiv and Washington, however, have suggested the heavy loss of Russian troops and the destruction of the city have lessened Soledar's strategic value. Right, so as soon as they lose a city, it loses strategic value. Okay, well, you make up your mind about that, guys, but go check out my videos on Soledar. They're some of my most viewed videos for good reason. It's a very strategic city, and again, it's going to allow the Russians to attack Bakhmut from the north, from Soledar, and that's I think they're going to create a pincer movement on Bakhmut. They're going to surround that also. Eventually, it is going to collapse here. So, but yeah, I think I'll make a video on that later. Anyways, so they launched a fresh wave of missile strikes all over Ukraine, mainly aimed at key infrastructure sites. So I think, they're trying to take out the Ukrainians' abilities to use the energy there, trying to demoralize the population, and also sort of setting the stage for a large offensive, while at the same time, giving them time to get ready for an attack on Bakhmut, or a major attack on Bakhmut there. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video here, guys. Again, the truth is stranger than fiction. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.